The national and world news now from ITN.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Government's rail privatization plans hit major delay. Water companies say no to compensation for drought. Chaos in the camps, the terror of the Rwandan refugees. And an appeal to treat the young prince as just William. Good evening. The government's plans to privatize the railways suffered a huge blow tonight. The Department of Transport confirmed it's postponing the sale of the biggest earning sector, the West Coast Line from London to Glasgow. It blamed the lack of investment in a crucial modernisation programme. Officials said it wouldn't affect the overall sell-off, but Labour called it a humiliating defeat for the government. Robin White has our report.
Tonight, considerable embarrassment for the government over rail privatisation. The sale of the West Coast Line appears to have been postponed because of difficulties in raising the £1 billion needed for modernisation. Analysts say the West Coast Lines represented the major investment that the track operator Railtrack was going to make.
What this decision reflects is the tremendous uncertainty about what is going to be done on the West Coast Main Line. Railtrack doesn't know what trains it's to modernise the line for. The franchisees wouldn't know what trains they were expecting to run. And until this lot is sorted out, it's impossible to get that franchise away. Now the government's admitted it.
Labour has lost no time in suggesting that this decision makes it impossible for the government to meet the targets it set itself.
The withdrawal of the West Coast Main Line from sale means that the government cannot achieve its target of selling off half of the train operating companies by April next year. In effect, the jewel of the crown has now fallen out.
Not so, says the government.
It will go ahead. It is the timing of it which has changed. And I think it is common sense that in offering this franchise to private sector operators, we do it at a time when we can give them clear information about what the impact of the investment programme will have on the services which they operate.
Among the 25 train operating companies, the West Coast Line raises over £220 million a year in fares, making it the largest income earner. The government says while this sale may have been dropped for now, it will have no effect on the overall privatisation programme. Robin White, News at 10, Central London.
Water companies rejected calls today that they should compensate 18 million customers over hosepipe bans. The industry watchdog, Ofwat, had challenged the companies to stand by an agreement to pay people if they failed to provide a proper service. But the companies argue the drought's been caused by exceptional weather, and that means they don't have to pay. ITN's Lawrence McGinty has the story.
It's what the water companies have been praying for, rain on their reservoirs. But today's sporadic showers, according to the weather forecasters, don't mean the end of the drought. They may have dampened down the heat wave, but they haven't dampened down the demand that gardeners should be paid compensation for not being able to use hosepipes and sprinklers.
Why is it that when we get to one warm, dry summer, that the gardeners are denied water from a tap just when they need it? And yes, if they've spent a lot of money on it, I think there should be some sort of compensation.
Last week, Ofwat said compensation should be paid if standpipes are set up. Today it went further, backing compensation for hosepipe bans.
We would hope and be disappointed if companies actually stood behind their strict statutory position in the light of an agreement that they made only 4 months ago to compensate customers for poor services.
That agreement lays down a framework of principles for compensation depending on whether actual loss or damage was caused and the extent of inconvenience. Critics say this is leakier than a water pipe, even taking into account company plans for remedying the problem.
Ofwat are a toothless tiger which hasn't done their job of regulation properly for the domestic customer, and the document which is published is not worth the paper it's written on.
Today, water companies rejected out of hand compensation for hosepipe bans and said their priority is drinking water.
To actually compensate some people who might use hosepipe on some occasions isn't the right way to go. The customer service solution is to make sure we get the water that matters
when it matters.
Today's showers haven't ended the drought. Neither will the industry's reluctance end what could be a flood of demands for compensation.
The forced expulsion of refugees from Zaire continued today. Some 15,000 have now been deported back to their home countries of Rwanda and Burundi. A further 130,000 have fled their camps and gone into the surrounding countryside. United Nations officials did step in to save more than 500 children from deportation. They reached a Mugunga camp near Goma before the Zairean soldiers.